Welcome back to the show, you radically healthy humans. Today, I had in the studio the Animal Based Bae, Miss Lindsay, and we covered a lot of ground in this conversation. I think you're going to learn some very cool, new, and surprising things about Lindsay's journey from dealing with celiac disease, being a martial artist, launching different businesses, how she arrived at the Animal Based Bae. We talk a lot about female nutrition and important considerations. Should women drink coffee, for example? We talked a lot about building resiliency. You'll learn Lindsay's favorite breakfast, lunch, and dinner meals, and we kind of just have a really cool, fun, intuitive conversation that covers a lot of ground. So I think you're going to love this show. So let's get into it. We'll see you there. Lindsay, welcome to the show, the Animal Based Bae in the flesh. My opening question to you before we dive into your story and all of that is, what is it like to be a woman, female nutrition expert and leader in this space in a predominantly masculine dominated space? Like, it's all men eating meat off the bone and stuff. What is it like to take up some space as a woman?
Yeah, it's definitely maybe a little bit lonely, but I think that I could hold my own. Just growing up as a martial artist, that was also a very male dominated sport. So I feel like, I still need a little bit of elbow room, so just kind of doing that. But I feel that there's a lot of energy behind me because I know there are a lot of women who want to have a voice and who also want to be a part of this message in this community. But I feel like maybe just don't have that sort of like, whether it be confidence or empowerment to do so. So I just kind of feel that it's something that it's a challenge, and I'm up for it.
Good. I'd say you're more than holding your own. I'm curious, like, how was it surprising to you to see how you blew up in the online space? Because you kind of, I'm sure we'll get into your story, and you've been working on a lot of this stuff behind the scenes for a long time. Yeah. But as a relative, like newcomer to social media in the last few years, you kind of ascended really quickly and got yourself quite well established. Was that surprising at all? Was that ever the plan? Was it just like, a complete chance happening? What was the story there?
Yeah, it really wasn't part of the plan at all. And actually, spoiler alert, I still don't have a plan to continue. I will be continuing, but just I don't have a plan. And so I think that you're right. It's kind of always been a part of my life where I definitely wanted to vocalize women's health from all perspectives, mental, physical, and spiritual even too, in fact. And so I've always had some sort of presence in, speaking engagements or online. It obviously wasn't as big as it is today. And so years before Animal Based Bae came, I was doing that and practicing that. And right actually before I decided to change to Animal Based Bae, I didn't want to be on social media. I was like, I'm not doing this. No. And then, with encouragement from some friends and my community around me, I just gave it one more shot. I was like, I'm going to try this just one more time. It's fine. We'll see what happens. So actually the fact that I didn't have a plan was to my benefit, because before that, if I think about all of my media presence and different platforms that I, in the different channels that I executed some of my messaging, I always had a plan, almost thought about it too much. So I think this felt more natural to just give it a go and see and put it out there.
Yeah, I love that. And we were speaking off air a little bit before we hit record about resiliency and taking the road less traveled and the harder path. And it sounds like you had to do that when you was almost ready to just be like, I'm out of this game. And then, no, let me give it one more shot. But that doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen overnight. You've already teased us with this martial artist background. So take us back a little bit. Where's the story originate? Like, what did you learn growing up? How did you come to be the Animal Based Bae? Like, take us on a little journey there of what you've learned and how you see the world these days.
Yeah, sure. So I guess at the age of 5, I was a martial artist, and a couple years later, gymnast as well too. So those were my two sports that I would think, live, breathe those sports. And funny enough, my dad was my sensei, the instructor. So yes, I had martial arts when I was younger in the dojo, but then it also bled into home life as well too. So definitely had a secondary dojo at home. And so this is sort of the birth of, you know, my practicing and my training and of building resilience, really. And so I trained essentially all the way up until about high school or so, when, you know, social life sort of took over and I had a little bit more resistance to just being a part of, you know, even though my dad was like every day, you know, so I had a little bit more resistance with that because I wanted to be a little bit more socially involved and so on. So, so that art really helped develop a lot of skill from my physical body to also mentally as well. And I didn't really learn the benefits of what it did for me mentally until much later, actually, when I was more mature, and I just sort of, you know, had a lot of introspection and understanding of what it really meant to be a martial artist. It wasn't just meant to be like, let me just take somebody down, wrist lock and all that stuff. So, so that's kind of where the physical part of it, not that it stopped, but that it reached a good, you know, max level. And then I went on and I went to college, and I also did develop a lot of weight training and personal training skills as well. My uncle was a personal trainer, and he actually lived with us for some time too. And so I would always kind of be taken under his wing, and he would show me the ropes. So there was a lot of that early on nutrition as it relates to fitness and wellness back then too, that I was taught. And kind of your basic, you know, protein, carbs, and a little bit of fat, right? Not more non-fat. And so anyway, so that's how I grew up. And then I was in college, and I did a lot of personal training and group classes and fitness classes. I always wanted to be physical. I was in a lot of different sports, intramural sports as well. Just kind of did everything. I was that person that wanted to try everything. And I knew that if I tried something, that I could just pick it up pretty quickly. So that grew. So physically I grew. And then it wasn't until after college where I did enter into the corporate world at one point in my life. We can talk about that if you want, but as it relates to more of, you know, sort of physical and mental health, I then, you know, I went to the corporate world and decided that wasn't for me. So then I moved on into it was a marketing manager, a mobile marketing manager. So I was on the road 100% of the time. I mean, I traveled to, like, there's 48 different states, and within this time period, about like 4 years or so. And then I would have increments of times where I did these marketing like festivals and things like that, bringing more brand awareness. And during those times, it was like maybe you can do 2 months or you could do 6 months at a time, and then you'd have off for a few months, and I would just go travel internationally. And so I was really interested in cultures. And I know, like, when you were talking about how you traveled and you lived in Australia and over here, and I feel, you know, that it just resonates because it really does bring a lot to the table physically and mentally. And you get to see different cultures. You get to see the way they eat. You get to see the way they live. You get to see their community, their culture. So I did a lot of travel. So then maybe about 35 countries later, 48 different states later, I landed back here and thought that, okay, I needed to find a little bit more of a, or commit at least to one location, or just feel a little bit more grounded. So then I entered into yoga, and I got my yoga teacher certification, but I still had a little bit of the travel bug in me. So I went to Thailand and did that for about a month. So as that changed from sort of like physical to a little bit more spiritual, then there was just my life sort of evolved into like listening more to myself, more intuition. And it evolved into taking my different disciplines and applying it into something that I could teach. And so from then, I decided that I wanted to teach women self-defense, actually. First it was yoga, and then it's like, this is a little too chill for me. little type A personality, but you get me. So I wanted to blend it because I thought that from a holistic perspective, the yin and the yang needed to combine. And so I wanted to teach self-defense. So obviously pulling from my martial arts background, and I grew up to teaching, kids martial arts and gymnastics. So that was always sort of little notes throughout my life. But so then I connected back with two friends of mine who are also black belt martial artists. And so together we formed something called Inner Warrior Project, and we taught younger women self-defense. So we wanted to make young women stronger and just know that they can feel confident and they can protect themselves. And the more and more that we taught and we received, just feedback from them as well, the more we understood that self-defense wasn't really necessarily physical. It all started with confidence and intuition and your poise, how you even hold yourself, right? Your body language communicates a lot. So from that, we realized that the workshops that we were doing, the self-defense workshops, it was really hard to get people to come to them and to want to do them because it was such a masculine sort of approach where it was like self-defense, right? Like people get scared of that. And I can completely understand. And so what I did was from Inner Warrior Project, I left because our visions changed a little bit, but we're completely friends today. As a matter of fact, I went to Santa Barbara where they're at now just recently, like 2 weeks ago, and hung out with them. And so I love them, and I still will always support what they do. And so my vision was a little bit differently, where I wanted to take a piece of Inner Warrior Project that I created, which is called Empower Hour. And what that did was it made it a more approachable workshop. It was about an hour workshop, Empower Hour. It was a more approachable workshop that offered almost like a fitness class in ways, but it was a little bit more intentional than that. We would have these breaking boards, and we would write in the beginning any negative narratives or stories that are holding us back from, living our fullest self, living our most confident, and write down what we're telling ourselves. And it was beautiful to just go through this and see all the stories and all, because we can all relate to that we have these sort of insecurities in them. And as they wrote them down, then we would go through a sort of yoga warm-up practice, right? Pulling from that discipline. And then get into like a kickboxing segment, because it's way easier to enter a kickboxing class than a self-defense class. Get into a kickboxing segment. And then at the end, it would culminate into us all breaking boards together and essentially breaking the narrative and reversing it. In my Hapkido, I practice redirection of force and energy. So it's not meant to, if you're to throw a punch at me, I'm not meant to block it or anything like that. I want to actually use your energy against you in order to have the least amount of resistance almost, but also to just, get away easier, right? So I use your energy against you, and then I'm able to escape. So kind of that way mentally as well. And so I feel that was something that I really resonated with, because I received a lot of energy from that, and something that was absolutely needed. So when I launched that, it was 2020. It was February 2020 in California when I launched it. And then guess what happened in March, right? So now I'm like, what the heck? This is a group gathering of events. It's a workshop that thrives off of having people in groups, and I can't do that anymore. So that was kind of a bummer. So as you were saying about resilience too as well, and just even my discipline of redirection of force and energy, it's kind of always been this buildup of training in ways that I didn't even know I was training for, right? And so pivoting, I guess I started to get really good at. And so when I pivoted, how I pivoted from this was I was really bummed, because I felt like this was definitely a calling that I wanted to do, is create these workshops and create these vibrant gatherings of just inspiration to just push people and nudge people in some direction that can just, help give them a little bit more confidence. And so I started a food business, a CPG business, which is just consumer packaged goods. And during this time, I still was involved in, fitness programs and also taking people, like not only group classes, but then I did programs with people as well too, where it was like 6-week programs where I would help them with their nutrition and their physical fitness. And then it got a little bit more advanced and detailed, and I started working with doctors where we would take hair follicle samples and blood tests and work closely with them, just where, they would read the analysis and then give me direct feedback so that I could understand how to integrate their nutrition and their workouts. So with that being said, I myself did follicle samples and realized that, oh, wow, I have heavy metals, too much heavy metals in my body, such as aluminum and things like that. And so then I would always try to get food and create food in order to, solve that problem in ways. And so I created this pesto that was a cilantro-based pesto that, could naturally chelate heavy metals out of the body with Brazil nuts, for selenium. And then I had spirulina in there as well as garlic even, but essentially why I went this path. And so I created that pesto, right? And just every time people would want me to make it for them. Oh, this is so good. Like, never heard of cilantro-based pesto. Awesome. And then, once 2020 hit, I was still thriving at my, crowd gatherings, and people loved the pesto. And one time somebody said to me, hey, why don't you just, start selling this at the farmer's market? You could do that. And it's in 2020. I'm like, well, people got to eat, I guess. And then when those essential businesses opened and the farmers markets and grocery stores, I was like, well, I guess I could try. So boom, Lindsay's Apothecary, pesto #1 was released. And my intention behind this was because I was still very health focused, performance focused, while also healing the body through nutrition. I obviously made sure it was in a glass bottle, but I saw the most overused in products in the industry, which is condiments, really, and where it was so overused, but people weren't thinking that it was causing, like calorie overload, or like this was, some of the hidden issues of weight gain or just, undesirable. So that's where I decided I didn't want any sugars. Well, I knew because I was eating this way anyways. And so I didn't want any sugars in there involved or any just processed foods. It was all whole foods blended and then created this really nourishing spread. So then just, a couple years into it, and funny enough, when I launched it, that's when I heard about like carnivore and went to try it. So it was really hard to launch it, but I thought that, hey, this is better than any other sauces really out there on the market. And so I still believe that people can absolutely get healthy off of this by removing the other sauces and spreads and still having that variety and flavor. So that's so then, the shelf life was maybe about a couple of weeks or so. And so that's where I was running into these issues with, calling different mentors or guides, and they would all say, put this in there, rosemary extract and citric acid and all these things that make it shelf stable. I'm like, but it doesn't align with who I am, because I don't want that stuff in the foods. This is the problem. And so at the end of the day, it was like, people just got to make food at home. But prior to that, one big thing that I really did miss about this conversation is in college, I was diagnosed with celiac disease. And so not only through, physical, martial arts, personal training, and all of these other, mental, mind, and spiritual developments, came a really hard lesson that I had to learn, that I was diagnosed with celiac disease in college. And this was also at a time where there was no substitution. There was no celiac friendly bread or gluten-free bread, or like now there's gluten-free everything. There's gluten-free milk. And you're like, sorry, what? Like, really? Now we're talking about marketing labels here. I see what's happening. So that really began my investigations into labels, into marketing, into all of these, different aspects of the food industry. And to come to the, point of, a lot of it was hidden in spreads and sauces, right? So then Lindsay's Apothecary spread and sauce business sort of like had that inspiration behind it. And you wouldn't think that. You would just immediately think breads, pastas, and all of these normal things, and they weren't. So anyway, so apart from avoiding, obviously, pretty much the Italian culinary scene, or at least the way that America portrays it, there was a lot of food that I had to eliminate. And it wasn't a pill. It wasn't anything that I needed to take, but it was all about elimination. And like the removal of that absolutely healed me, and what I ate then is not still what I'm eating now. Though it healed me, it made me feel better. It didn't warrant a freshman 15 like everybody was doing. Actually, it did the opposite. So I felt great and awesome. And at that time period in my life, that was what healed me. So with that being said, there were some fascinating findings that I found within that. And then, of course, moving along in life, time, and space, my nutrition has evolved to optimize for who I am today.
There's a really important, there's a lot of important stuff there, but from the nutritional perspective, I think you hit something that's really critical, which is a lot of what constitutes a good diet is what you're not eating, right? It's this removal process. And let's say you got meat pilled on this kind of like carnivore rabbit hole, and maybe you even did like the strict carnivore version for a while, which is what we'd probably call the ultimate elimination diet.
Right.
But now coming full circle, it's not always about restriction and removal. It's now about adding back in and biodiversity of the foods that you can eat that don't trample on your health. So how do you currently arrive now at this like whole journey of your conceptual framework of like an animal-based diet? What does that represent to you? Because it doesn't sound like it's complete restriction and removal of everything. It sounds like it might need that element to it. And then it's about adding stuff back in. So where's your current stance on the animal-based diet and helping people to find what works for them?
Yeah, it's not... it's not in everybody's DNA to sometimes go 0 to 60 like I do sometimes. And so I have to always remember that, not only through the comments and the feedback that I do get from the audience, but also just in my own journey and my own experience with past clients. And I do think it's really powerful to do elimination, and that's of any sort, not only in your food, but also your surroundings. I mean, how good does it feel to do a spring cleaning, or to just, if you're hoarding things, to let go of things? Like, it feels like a legit weight. And you weren't consuming your clothes. You just emptied your closet, but you feel like completely light. So I feel that with that, I feel like if somebody wants a place to start, just start by making things simple. Because the more that you make things simple, the more that you open up other doors to feel what you need. And I think we've lost connection with that. We've lost connection with understanding what we intuitively need and how we need to be nourished intuitively. And so it may be boring, it may be mundane at first, but I think that the more that we can embrace the boring, I think we talked about this a little bit before we did hit record, is just embracing the suck in ways. Sure, it's not crunchy and it's not always fun, or things that the food industry does now just to get you addictive. It's not those fun immediate sort of highs, if you will, from food. It's it's not necessarily always crunchy. It's just it's nourishment. And so I do hear people when they do have families and they do have a life to live as well too, and they do have kids, and stressors come into play here too. So there's always a balance from an individual's perspective too, and so you can't always generalize it. But from an individual's perspective, I do try as best as I can to keep it simple, but also to add that variety for people to know that, hey, you can take some of the, least toxic plant foods such as fruits and make it into a fun sauce, and you can make it into a kid-friendly, animal-based school lunch, and you can do all these things. You can use it with very minimal ingredients and simple ingredients. And that is the only way that I feel that we are able to start the process of understanding what, undesirable feelings and symptoms we are having, is by just being super simple.
Yeah, I think when initially, like when you try to encourage people on that way of life, it's very like deficit driven. To them, it feels like all the stuff that they're missing out on, and they forget sometimes that what's on the other side of that is what they have to gain, which is health and vibrancy back, or the cycle, or the vitality, or reversing something they've dealt with, like celiac disease and the issues that come upstream of that, that they've probably dealt with for a decade or more. So it's really empowering people to think about, yes, you're gonna lose out on some of your crunchy snacks potentially. Yeah. There are great alternatives now, especially, as we get more and more in this space and get more popularity. Like you said, everything's popping up now. You can find beautiful pasture-raised pork rinds to satisfy the crunch and all kinds of manner of things. And when you've done this for long enough, like you and I have been doing this for a long time, you've been doing this for a long time now, you start to really prioritize that nourishment. And I'm sure you don't eat anything really that you are completely grossed out about. No, organs gets a touchy subject there, because people are not so psyched about eating some liver sometimes. Right. But almost everything that I put in my gob these days is bloody delicious. I love the food that I get to eat, and I love the way that it makes me feel. Right. And in that case, it's like, what am I going back to if I went back to all the things I used to love? If it was just, a carboholism and, gluten with every meal and pizza and all of that stuff. Yeah. Mouth pleasure, but what's the cost of that? Right. So I definitely resonate with this like KISS principle. Keep it simple, silly, totally. Remove the excess, not just from a dietary perspective, but from a lifestyle perspective. Like when you said think about how good it is to spring clean, I was thinking about how good it is to like have a day where you don't look at your phone, for example. Oh my gosh. And you're like social media diet and the news media diet and the email diet. Like it's all our diet, right? So I think there's some real good points in there. And I'm also curious, because being in this space, nutritional, it's very, I said this, it's very masculine dominated, but also like a lot of the science, a lot of the understanding, studies done predominantly on men. There's like almost like a fundamental missing piece for understanding female nutrition. So as you become the animal-based bae, and the bulk of your audience, I'm going to guess, are women that are looking to improve their health. What important considerations do you think are necessary to talk about when it comes to an animal-based diet for women in particular? Sure. Yes, it's definitely a space that, needs more support for sure. And so as it relates to women, we aren't men. We go through hormonal changes, very different, And so I think that this, more than anything, it's more important to be more simple. It's more important and the reasons to be more simple is so that you can understand what's going on inside intuitively, understand the hormonal phases and understand how to react to them based on that. Question for you there. Sure. Like you don't get taught that, right? Like in school or anything? Like how'd you learn that? No, I mean, just my own research, really. Okay. It's just definitely self-taught. And, once I sort of like Pandora's box, once celiac disease happened for me, there was just a lot of different things that I wanted to research and look into. And actually that wasn't something that was really prioritized then. And maybe it was because I was in more of my masculine energy there. Right. And so, some of my challenges today are even just trying to balance that appropriately. And even as you mentioned, like kind of social diet and detox, and we'll talk about that in a second. 'Cause I'm just like thinking about that lately over the past week, but yeah, it's where this is important because the bloating doesn't happen, or the water retention doesn't happen to you guys, cyclically. So it's all of these things that you have to pay attention to what your body's really needing, and it's your body too, and it's not your emotions, right? So there's a lot of things that we want to try to pay attention to and listen to. And so when we are eating, processed foods, or maybe drinking, and as it relates to some of our emotional status, then we're just clouding out what our body really needs. And we're not really nourishing exactly what we need. So from a emotional standpoint, there's actually this book called When Food is Love, and by Jean Roth. And what she does is really just describes how much we leverage food into our emotional state.
And so I know that women struggle with this a lot of times too, you know? And so from that respect, I think that definitely needs to change. But I also feel like it's a bigger picture. It's not just nourishment and how much you can kind of simplify your diet. And an animal-based diet is a great way to not only simplify, but also to get your full nutrients and minerals that you need, that are essential, that are vital, you know, in order for us to survive and be in harmony with our body. There's also a physical aspect to it too, where you have to work hard. You have to. And I know Dr. Gabrielle Line would be clapping in the corner if she heard me say this, but muscle is super important, you know, as a woman and as we grow and as we age. And of course, you know, women are always like, you know, eat meat and muscle, masculine, and blah, blah, blah. I wore a dress today so that I can show off that I can be feminine too. I know a lot of you guys have seen me on my Instagram and, you know, workout clothes or sweaty, my hair up or lifting weights and eating, you know, organs and all of these things. But we can be feminine. I'm actually feel more feminine than I ever have because confidence, right? I don't feel fragile. I feel balanced at all points in my cycle. You know, even when I am during my menstrual cycle, I don't feel as, you know, as bloated or as blue or just brain fog as I used to. Of course, hormone symptoms, they happen. And so you're going to feel that. But it's really just embracing that feeling and not having to take Midol because it's something that you feel. I did in the past, actually, a long time ago, because my periods were super brutal. But then literally when I changed to an animal-based diet, they went away. And not saying that my symptoms completely went away, but the brutality of it was just completely gone. I mean, I'm still working and moving during it. So I feel that by having this sort of basis, like when you can feel strong and confident in those hormonal changes, and this is really just what feminine really means to me.
So you're telling me that lifting weights doesn't make you bulky. It actually empowers you to be more in your feminine. What an interesting statement, because that's what we hear all the time. I won't lift weights. It'll make me too much like a little man. I'll make me bulky. Yeah. So you enjoy lifting weights, building muscle, feeling that confidence? I
do. Yep. Building muscle. And it's really for more longevity, you know, than just kind of leanness and looks. And of course, you know, we all want to look a certain way. So I'm not denying that. Of course, I like looking and having a certain physique. And I feel like everybody's goals are different. But I do feel like, you know, fitness is a major part, if not almost like 50-50 when it comes to nutrition, to working out more and more, especially for women.
And I like that you said, you know, just taking more of this holistic view of what's really important. And, you know, diet's obviously a huge piece of this. We eat pretty much, you know, 3 meals a day, every day for the rest of our lives. Yeah. But this movement piece is important. And I know that you also believe in the way in which we manage our lifestyle and the resilience and the drive. And I'm always fascinated by how we square this circle. Because I'm a man and I live in a culture that has a lot of these like masculine ideals of just like fucking get after it and crush it, build businesses, and, you know, you can sleep when you're dead and all of that stuff. I'm also acutely aware that a lot of those masculine ideals don't necessarily fit the feminine, softer, more intuitive, more curious energy, especially at certain times in a cycle. So for you out there, entrepreneurially trying to build a business of impact and show up every day and create content in a world where you've acknowledged that maybe I've been stuck in my masculine before. How are you finding balance in that way these days, where you can have that yin and yang really nicely balanced?
Right. You know what? Truth be told, I'm not right now. And I've come to a head with it like just recently. But how I'm finding balance, like anything else, isn't like, oh, here's a supplement about balance, let me take that. It's been probably about 6 months where I've started to kind of really struggle with that. And as I view nutrition, as I view working out, and as I view just life as a whole, as we're talking about right now, it comes down to just trial and error in your own life, because what you do today to make your life efficient and to create balance socially for you is not going to be the same for me. and even if it's, Noelle over here, who's a woman, it's still not going to be the same for me. Even if it's somebody with exactly my height, my weight, and all of these things, just because I'm using the same macros as you do when we're talking about maybe from a social aspect to it, it's not going to work for me because my life is different and how, I receive and how I expend energy and all of these things. So what I like to do is just test it and try it and be patient with it and embrace the moments that don't feel like I'm getting ahead or progressing. And so I've looked at it on a scale of each day, like, okay, in the morning, I'm going to do this. And then late morning, I'm going to do this. Afternoon, evening. Okay, that doesn't work. All right, great. Maybe Monday through Wednesday, I'm going to focus on this. And Thursday and Saturday, I'm going to focus on this. Great. Yeah, that doesn't work. Tried it. Doesn't work. How about Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Okay. No, that's not working. How about 1 week, like from a whole month perspective now, like how are we balancing it instead of, minute to minute by our daily lives? And so right now I'm currently in that process of discovering how to balance it, because I do think that, okay, if there is anything that is one of my weaknesses right now, it is, and it's not that I'm media addicted or anything of that sort. I don't believe. It's just that trying to create a business, myself and keep it alive, because if I stop, the business stops. So I'm just trying to find the best spot for it to flow where I can also find time to myself. And so I'm trying to create these healthy spaces for myself. I don't have the exact code right now for you.
Well, I think people will really appreciate that vulnerability because in social media land, the only thing we see is the highlight reel of everybody's life.
Right.
And I think there's this asymmetry that exists. I call it the front row to the shit show. So from your own front row seat to your own shit show, you're aware of all your own neuroses and your patterns and like, why do I keep doing this? And I feel like this. And then from that seat, you watch everybody's highlight reel of their life, the curated, filtered, perfectly put together.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for people to acknowledge somebody that's got a large social media following. So on the outside looking in, you're like, oh, Lindsay's got it all figured out. To sit here and say, yeah, you know what? Not all of it. And I'm still learning and I'm still figuring it out. And I think that's really important for people to hear. And it brings up another question for me, which is what maybe then are some of the like hidden ugly truths about being a content creator that people wouldn't understand? Because I think people look at it and they're just like, oh, you got it easy. You just make videos and then you probably sell products and it's great and blah, blah, blah. But what are some of the things that maybe people would misunderstand about that lifestyle in terms of the hidden pressures or the things that you go through from a mental health perspective, etc.?
Yeah. Lots of pressures. And it's all of how you handle it too. And so as mentioned recently, I'm not handling it well right now. So but I'm actively working on it. So I will say that. And I see light at the end of the tunnel, so it will be handled. But yeah, it's not just, standing in front of the camera and just speaking and saying these things and, exposing certain products. It's just about, for me, at least personally, and I'm just going to talk of myself as a content creator, is I do take a lot of pride in my work. And I have come from a perfectionist background where, and even just in my training and when I competed and all of this, there's like I don't want to show it unless it's shiny and prepped and ready to go. But sometimes you miss things and, how can you put all of these things into a 1 minute reel and come across like, hopefully it lands with everybody. Everybody understands what I'm trying to say. And, and not that I care too much about offending people. I mean, I guess I do, but, I guess trying to care too much about offending all people, if so I try to do my best to come from a very organic state, and so it's not only about doing it and filming it, but actually having to feel like you have to be presentable that day, and is it every day that you're filming and doing all these things? And that takes hours of time to write it, to curate something, and then to present it, like I said, in a minute video that is not only going to get your attention to wake up, because it's not, and it's also, it's because we also have to work with an algorithm on Instagram as well too, in order for you to see that message. So now it's more research into, the hashtags and the tags and how are more people going to see it in order for you to, gain more exposure and all of that. So that's just a reel. But now we have YouTube to work with, which has its own set of analytics and ways that you can, give yourself more exposure to your message. And then you have the police, who are out there now. YouTube is censoring now too. And so it's just like, well, what outlet do you have? And not only do you have the outlet that you just, hit record on, like I said, there's more to it, but then there's also more to it to actually learn the systems of it, right? I have a website, and so there's so many systems that you have to learn within Squarespace, and then how different systems integrate. And then, hey, you should start a community, or, you should do a cookbook, or, there's a lot of, tasks and things that need to happen before just creating a video.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The analysis paralysis can be really real.
Yeah.
It can feel like a lot. And sometimes I'm in a very similar position as you. My audience is much smaller, but I resonate a lot with what you said about basically pissing people off and the trolls and the comments, etc. And the way I kind of confront that is, like being a content creator and fighting for something you're passionate about, like an animal-based diet, like this more holistic message for health. You can't be loved by everybody. There's no leader that has ever existed that has been loved by everybody. Some people are going to love you. Some people are going to hate you. And you just have to reconcile that that's okay, because it's not your job to shrink your truth to appease anybody else. You've just got to do it from love, like you said. You've got to do it from like, this is what is most present and true for me right now. And we've also simultaneously got to work on all of those other things. Like, I don't want to show up today, but Wednesday's content day, and I have this thing with this photographer, and la 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 la. So with that in the room, and a lot of this kind of like self-inflicted pressure, let's say.
Yeah.
What are some healthy habits that you're really leaning into now, aside from your diet, of course, because that seems to be a really rock solid staple for you? What are some other potentially maybe surprising habits that you're really leaning into so you can stay grounded and connected and aware and listening to your intuition and just finding that balance again?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously food, as you mentioned too, is foundational. And without that, I must say, like, without that anchor that lives in my life constantly, it's really hard to find any other healthy habits, for me to even think clearly about that. And even when I feel like I am overwhelmed or stressed, such as, certain times like now, then without that, I feel like there's probably way worse. Like I could feel way worse. Right.
Yeah.
So definitely working out every day, non-negotiable. And it's no excuse. And I think that more than anything, the healthy habits of trying to lean on discipline more than anything. And it's not always about motivation. I don't wake up every day and I'm super motivated. I mean, there's more days than not where I wake up like that, just because of how much I take care of my body on a daily basis. But yeah, just getting out there and doing it no matter what. And
what is that for you? How do you like to work out?
How do I like to work out? Wow. So that changes sometimes too. But right now, currently, I probably about every other day is some sort of like strength and heavy lift day.
Cool.
And then in between that, there's some high intensity interval training, maybe about like 1 to almost 2 times a week, depends. And then there's definitely a kickboxing day in there where it just beats crap out of the back.
The tools,
Yeah, you got to do that. And then there is a sort of a longer day of where I'm rucking.
Cool. Yeah.
So just kind of cycling in between those. And I feel like another healthy habit that I just layer in as it relates to all spokes of life, meaning nutrition, meaning working out, meaning anything, is adding some resistance, right? So if I'm working out and it's easy for me to accomplish a certain amount of reps, like such as, weight training, resistance training, I just add more, right? And it's to really tackle the little voices sometimes that come up in your head, because your brain is looking for the most efficient way to do things. And the most efficient way to do things is not to go through tons of resistance and discomfort and all of that. So it's really just trying to have that conversation with the brain and just saying, look, there's a little bit of discomfort right now. but it will make you stronger later. It will make you more resilient later. And so capitalizing on the moments that make me more resilient, making sure that I take trips that lead to discomfort, and to uncomfortable situations. So these are the healthy habits that aren't necessarily folded into my day where it's like, I make sure that I have, red light every day where, I do fold in infrared lighting for sure. I think it helps optimize. But I think that it's really the mental game and the mental conversations and the check-ins with myself that, whether it be, weekly or quarterly or so on, that I find is really helpful to say, hey, what do we need to do here, to get from point A to point B? What are your goals? And do we want to get there? Well, if we want to get there, we got to do the work.
Yeah, you're right. I think to use a training analogy, you need to progressively overload life too, not just in the gym. Of course, right? If you lifted that and it's, perceived rate of exertion, that's a 7 out of 10. Like, let's see if we can move it to an 8 out of 10. But these microdosing that discomfort in your life too, the old cliche that there's no comfort in growth. There's no growth in comfort. You grow at the edge of your comfort zone. And I liked what you said. It reminds me of something Rob Wolf, I heard him say a long time ago. People always tell you, eat less and move more. And your genes are basically telling you to eat more and move less.
Yeah.
So there needs to be some sense of command over the mind. To the point where all things in moderation include in moderation. Like we see people die on the sort of discipline too. Like they're 4 hours of sleep and they never miss a workout. And it's like, there's always an evolving balance. And I think the check-in process that you mentioned is really good to just make sure that these things are working for us instead of against us, that they're energy gaining, not energy draining. And I think self-awareness plays into that a lot. Otherwise, you just end up on the treadmill of whatever it is. And hopefully it's a better treadmill, not the treadmill of like hedonism, but the treadmill of growth. But it still can, the dose makes the poison in all things, right? For
sure. Yeah. And nourishment comes in all forms. It's not just the food we eat, but, nourishment, what is going to nourish me today, and if you don't feel like, going for a 10-mile run isn't going to nourish you, don't do it. Maybe do some other form of movement. What is going to, give you that, yummy energy for life in the day's activities. So, yeah. And I really enjoy, I think, Michael Easter, the discomfort crisis or the comfort crisis.
Comfort crisis, yeah.
Great book. And I feel that I definitely gained some inspiration from that too as well. Not only through my own like trainings and just really resilience has always just been the theme throughout my life, but also we, get a chance to read or, absorb information from certain people that, you're not, though it has been taught throughout my life. Sometimes you just resonate with things that have been kind of consistently in your life, and then it resonates more at a particular time. So when you read something like that, or perhaps you're hearing something like this, that is, hey, just push yourself a little bit more, just, lean into discomfort a little bit. I think that those are some of the key components of some healthy habits that are really just more of like mental healthy habits that can really elevate your life. Yeah,
I agree. In terms of fostering that resiliency in the world that you've become particularly known for, building a plate of nourishment, I think something you said about having this kind of big rock in place, that your nutrition even allows you to hold the capacity for more stuff coming into life, which is probably down to things like micronutrients and the fact that stress depletes minerals, etc. But you're so buffered against that you've got more range. So what are, the key principles, or maybe even some top foods that you really prioritize highly on that list to keep that resiliency in place?
Protein.
Protein. Let's go.
For sure.
Glad you said that.
Me. Yeah, for sure. I think that protein is definitely number one foods. And this goes without saying, you can't just eat protein and then have your fries and sandwich hamburgers on top of that, right? I'm talking about from a very clean plate perspective. You have an empty plate, and the first thing I would put on there is protein. And now it's not even just any protein, really. I think that prioritizing variety is good in your protein intake from, different animals, such as elk and bison and cows, or beef and lamb even, everyone has their own different micronutrient density, especially, even seasonally and geographic location. So it's really cool. And you don't need to know all the details. You just need to know, hey, there's a diversity in there that I feel like, would be holistically beneficial for me. Great. Yeah. Collagen for sure. And so that can definitely be found in meat. And so as it relates to the variety of protein that's on your plate, it's, things like your oxtails or things like your bone marrows or your bone broth soups. Fall is coming up. I think the equinox is a Saturday. So, 'tis the season for soups. So you double down, I just dropped a oxtail pumpkin puree.
Yum.
It's an oxtail stew soup and pumpkin puree on my YouTube channel. I have a cooking with me show, but I just dropped that recipe in there because oxtail is just like, it's so nourishing and it has, so many of those, so much collagen in there that I think that especially as we age too. But it's not that women who are younger, who are listening to this, think that they can still get away with, McDonald's and all of these things. What you do today will help benefit your future self. Trust me. And, I just think about this all the time when, your parents said something and it wasn't necessarily always this, but you're like, yeah, whatever, what do you know? I'm like, trust me, we all do know. So we all feel like our parents here, but what you do eat today benefits tomorrow for sure. It all again just starts piling into that resiliency bowl that you're just going to be more resilient later on. So collagen. Did you say one food, two foods, maybe?
I wanted a list. I've actually got a follow-up question to this, but now you're pulling me on a tangent, and I'd love to get your perspective on this because the two foods that you mentioned prioritizing, like protein, and you said meat, and then you said collagen, and I'm very interested because that again seems to be like more associated with the masculine. And what do you think of like the cultural tropes that like ladies go out and they order a salad, and maybe if they're feeling excessive, they get a bit of white fish and tilapia, and they eat light and they eat like rabbit food, and you're out here like, no, meat is really powerful and empowering and serves your health. But there does seem to be this cultural pull towards more of a plant-based diet. And we were looking at statistics before we jumped on the show. It's pretty much 70% of people that choose to go vegan are female. So it's much more alluring to that energy for some reason. Maybe it's supposedly more feminine to not eat meat. How do you square that circle, and how would you like kind of just push back against those arguments and say, no, ladies, we need a big steak as well?
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, it's so hard to say. I feel like when you look at a salad, it just looks lighter, and maybe you want to be like the salad. So part of me feels like the leaves and the greens and the colors just like make it prettier and more feminine, maybe. I feel that women are more focused on calories, and that is not the way to nourishment nor health. And constantly being in that caloric deficit has multiple consequences later. And so I feel that I'm not, there's a lot of marketing out there too. And so it may not be their fault in choosing this either, because I think that if you maybe let's take a week, like women are maybe out in the wild, and then you present them with different plates with no media or no marketing, or nobody's telling you what to eat, and nobody's telling you what's good for the planet and all of these things. And I just wonder what they would intuitively choose. And many times, and especially in, their most vulnerable state, a lot of women may choose actually meat and something that's nourishing. So in their most vulnerable state, right? But when they are fed this stuff of what being feminine looks like, it's not real. So they're just trying to match up to that. But when inside they're really just depleted of, vitamins and minerals and all of these nourishing nutrients that really actually make you feminine and make you a real good host for, future family.
Yeah, right.
And that's what really feminine is to me. Yes. And I think there's a lot of women who, I guess not a lot of women, but the women who are carnivore or who are animal based, they don't look super jacked or, masculine or anything like that. Sure, maybe certain women do look like that because that is their goals, or they're competing, or, they're doing these CrossFit sports and they are maybe scooping creatine and having tons and tons of gains. But, the amount of protein you need is 1 gram per pound of body fat. And that will not get you to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No. It's funny, like, I think men always hear women say, oh, I'm not resistance training because it'll make me bulky. And they're like, I've been trying to get bulky for a decade. Yeah. Like, it doesn't work like that, especially when, the hormonal backbones of the body, like less testosterone and stuff, would make that even more, challenging unless you're, on some kind of an exogenous support and, maybe getting some extra help there chemically. But, for the most part, I think you're right. And, this potentially like this failing then of women because of this really trendy, sexy vegan hand grenade that they lob over the fence. Like, it's good for you, it's good for the planet, it's good for the animals. And, we've talked ad nauseum about pushing back against that. But not only does it leave them potentially, just choosing their plate based on cultural norms, but then the fallout of that is rampant nutrient deficiencies a year or two down the line. And like, if the feminine is really this vessel and vehicle for life, this portal for life, and now you run into infertility issues, how empowering to the feminine is that really?
Totally, yeah. And I do have actually something to say to that too. I wonder if a lot of it, and you wonder when it's going to be our turn for, leanness, and some women who have a really healthy muscular figure to be shown as something to aspire to, right? Where it's before it was, thin supermodel. Yeah. Now it's this, sort of like bigger butt, sort of Kim Kardashian, style. And I wonder if it's because it is hard work to get to a strong body, that there's not a lot of people. There's not a lot of grit from women that want to face that and to do that, and I think that that's the important message, is to say that you can do it. You can, it's not easy, but you need to embrace the suck. You need to make it things, almost harder for yourself. Before, this online on the podcast, I talked about go the path of least resistance, or most resistance. Yeah. Don't go the path of least resistance. Go the path of most resistance, because that is going to make you stronger and healthier, stronger bones, and I don't think that there's many women, maybe, inspirational or celebrity sort of style women that do that. And so therefore, someone to look up to is not in that field. And therefore then you can't market it towards that and all these things. So I don't know. That's just what I think in my brain that could be potentially what's happening too. It's just that there is no model to look after to strive for that.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And I think, just coming back around on that, choosing the chosen adversity again of just like growth. And I have this trite little aphorism I like a lot, which is easy choices, harder life, harder choices, easier life.
Totally.
Because in making that harder choice, you get to really grow into the possibility of who you could be. And that's for everybody to choose, what they're aspiring to, and maybe, reassess what role models we have in culture. And is that something you actually want, or is that something you are being told that you should want? Because, I don't know, Kim K has a nice fake bum, for example, right? Is that, would that fix, what's really, alive in you? So I think that's really cool. And to come back to the nutrition piece, I think the way I'll kind of ask you this question is, because this will speak to the nutrient density in foods that you would personally prioritize. And I know this is an individual question, but I think there'll be a lot of value in here. If you could only eat 3 meals for the rest of your life, your breakfast, lunch, and dinner had to be the same every day, what roughly would that look like? What would your breakfast be? What would your lunch be? What would your dinner be?
I have a follow-up question.
Okay, what is it?
Do I have any kitchen tools?
Yeah, of course. You can have a fully organic kitchen. You can even weave in some craziness like bone broth and stuff if you want, but you've got all the tools.
Okay. So like even grill and all that.
You got a grill, you got a sous vide, you've got an instant pot, you've got it all, but you're only eating the same 3 meals over and over again.
Oof. Okay. And then, I guess it would be, that is such a tough question. I'm going to say ground beef.
Love some ground beef.
Yes. And of course, like if I like all the money in the world too, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Unlimited.
Great. All right. See, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Like,
is this ground beef? Where are we starting with ground beef here? Is this ground beef for breakfast? Or are you like moving ground beef?
This is ground beef for breakfast.
Okay,
yeah.
Ground beef for breakfast.
Yep.
That's a little different. Okay.
Ground beef for breakfast. Yeah, I always have a burger.
Like meat cereal.
Meat cereal.
That's what I call it. I do a pound of ground beef with maybe some eggs. It's meat cereal.
Oh yeah, exactly.
There you go.
I just saw on somebody's Instagram, I think it was, I forget, but they were actually made like dehydrated chicken and chopped it up as if it was like cinnamon toast crunch and put some milk in it. I was like,
that's extra.
That doesn't even
Yeah, that's extra.
Anyway, so probably about a meat patty with an egg on top. Is that allowed?
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, good.
Breakfast burger.
Yeah. And a little bit of kefir.
Beautiful.
Okay, great.
Kefir for the probiotics and such.
Correct.
Cool.
Probiotics, as well as, it's just,
it's tasty.
you have the fat and the carbs and, as well as the protein in there too. Then I would have for lunch, I would have some bone broth. And then, but my homemade bone broth, not the kind you find in the store because it's pretty diluted with not even good water. My bone broth, really, nice and jiggly. I like that. So that, and then I guess I only have 2 meals, so it's really hard to think of a lunch.
You could just do leftovers from dinner. So what's dinner?
Okay, that's true. Okay, good. So it would be bone broth pretty much.
Cool.
And then probably like lamb shank.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Slow cooked.
And yep. And because then if you put the bone broth in there, then it reduces down to this beautiful au jus and you don't really need much of anything. It's so flavorful. It's unbelievable. And you just need salt. So between that and just, the marrow that you can get from the bone, as well as just like that super collagenous tissue too, that really strengthens bones, your joints, your ligaments, all of these things. Because then if I only have these 3 foods, I want to make sure that I can keep skiing and doing all these activities that I really want to do and just really essentially put the lube in my joints to just age gracefully. And when I say ground beef too in the begining, it's a blend of liver and of heart.
There we go.
Liver, heart. So it's an ancestral blend because I do feel like those are imperative to the diet. Then I said kefir, but then I also always have fruit with it. I do have a big breakfast.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure of how much food I can have in one sitting.
You can have as much as you want. It's just your perfect breakfast. So we got some fruit now. What fruit are we having?
So it's in season. So, but if it were to be one fruit, then I would say, geez. Why do I put this on myself? Ooh, I really love grilled peaches.
Ooh, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
Grilled peaches. Okay. I like that. I could get down with this diet. It feels like I'd be happy pretty much eating that every single day. Coffee. What about coffee?
Oh, yeah.
We get a lot of, obviously, the extreme views of coffee is burnt bean juice. It's got all these anti-nutrients. It makes you poop and it's not good. Yeah. I am admittedly a caffeine addict. I love this stuff and I justify it. But there's always a hint of shame when I go to take my double espresso. So where does coffee fit into your equation? Is it a yes, no, it depends maybe? Is it always a yes for you? Yeah. What do you suggest for people's relationship with coffee?
Definitely yes for me. So as it relates to me, for sure, I've tried without it because again, just going super simple from when I first started, I just wanted to see if I could optimize anything without it. How did it feel? And honestly, it didn't miss it. And I did it for a few months too. So I gave it a good go. Then I added it back in my life and cognitively speaking, it really just makes my life a lot better, I feel, and as long as I am sourcing the best quality that I can, finding pesticide free, mold free coffee, organic, fair trade, quality gourmet coffee, then I feel good about that choice. And of course, whatever I put in it with, whether it's raw milk or cream or maybe an egg yolk, super amazing. And to leverage it to the point where it's not taking away from my day or taking tomorrow away or taking the next day away. So until I get to that point, then maybe I can readdress like what caffeine means in my life. And then for those who are thinking about caffeine or coffee in general, maybe you might want to look at how it relates in your life. Like, are you anxious? Are you suffering from gut issues? Like, then we need to look at these things that can affect and cause those symptoms too. So I would say just try it. But if it does take a few years off of my life at the end of life, I'm okay with that because I enjoy every second of it every day.
I love it. I feel similar. I've tried life without it. And I think that is the invitation, really, is to, wherever you're at on the coffee. If you don't drink it, great. We're not saying you need it by any means. But if you do, and it's been a habit for years of your life, and maybe you're the kind of person that also justifies the 3:00 in the afternoon cup for the energy boost, then maybe it's time, just as a call to action, to wean off and try life without it. Admittedly, that could suck. You might get the caffeine headaches, you might get the withdrawal symptoms, but it is very interesting to go through this experiment, like we started the conversation with, of removal and keeping it simple. And then you can decide where and when you want to add it back in. And similar to your story, I've done lots of time without coffee. I'll come off for retreats and such. And, it's miserable for a few days. And then I get fine and I'm really balanced. And I'm like, I like myself without coffee, but I always come back. And I feel that, maybe that's my slightly addictive personality, but it's also I do enjoy the kind of, inherently like motivating ritualistic aspects of coffee too. So it's not a one size fits all, like you said, with a lot of this stuff. So my last question before we talk to our callers here, this is kind of a random question, but should women eat testicles? I don't, when I say this, it's always, you have to frame it where, once again, it's like, what are you doing it for? What's your intention behind it? I don't think so frequently. I think that, maybe if you do have low testosterone levels, maybe it might be a good thing to help optimize those levels. I don't think so frequently. I have my first time doing it was in Costa Rica and it was raw. And it's not like it's terrible. I think that everybody should try it. Just for the sake of, it's a good, what do you call it? Like a party trick. You just say, hey, I've had testicles before, have you? Yeah. So no, I don't think it needs to be frequently in our diet. No. Cool. When you ate testicle, did anything happen? Did you turn into this crazy maniac? You just wanted to go lift all the weights?
I had this sort of black hair grow on my chest, and I was like, wow.
That's very feminine. Yeah. I like it. Okay, great. Cool. We're going to transition into talking to a couple callers we've got on the line as well, which is always a fun part of this. So let's see if they're in the room here. We've got Sydney and Aisha. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. So who's up first? Sydney. What can we help you with? Sydney calling from Georgia today. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi.
Before I ask my question, I just want to take a very brief moment to express my gratitude for you and your content. From a female content consumer to a female content creator, your vital role and your vulnerability is the rest of us how thankful we are. We're very grateful for the content that you're creating. And I know that you probably experience creative fatigue, but you are paramount in my journey, and I know for so many other women. So I just wanted to say thank you so much deeply for what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
My first question is making a cookbook something that you're interested in?
Yes. So first, thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate it. And if anything, it gives me inspiration. As I mentioned before that I'm just, kind of in a little bit of a creative sticky spot. So I really appreciate it. I needed that. I needed to hear that. So as far as a cookbook goes, it's definitely something that keeps on coming into the picture, right? And last year around this time, Thanksgiving, I created a little PDF for a holiday menu, a set holiday menu, and that seemed to work for people, and people really made some fabulous recipes, as I saw on my Instagram. So yes, I am absolutely thinking about that. When, I don't know yet. Hopefully when there's some room on the plate and on my table.
All right. I can't wait. My second question is, how do you create an animal-based meal plan around your fitness goals?
Sure. That's always a tricky one. So if you're asking how I create it for myself personally, it just depends on performance. It depends on what type of fitness goals. Am I going to, am I entering into ski season? Yeah, my nutrition changes a lot when I enter into ski season because I'm going from bell to bell, meaning I am up at 7 a.m. and I am ready to hit the slopes by 8 or 9 whenever the lift's open, and then I'm done by 5. And so essentially, electrolytes and hydration is like of the most important, but it's not that if I was living sort of my normal day and working 9 to 5, I wouldn't be drinking as much, sodium or just, honey really on the slopes. I wouldn't be doing that at my office chair. Though sometimes I mean, of course I do like a spoonful of honey. So it all depends on what my fitness goals are, where I'm at, geographical location, like how hard I'm training. So yes, it definitely matters.
Cool. Thank you for those awesome questions and your energy, Sydney. I love that. What I will add, even though Lindsay's sitting on the cookbook idea, we do have coming soon to the Heart and Soil page some recipes that you shot with the team as well.
Right.
So you were recently doing some magic in the kitchen. The very talented team here caught those on video, so they'll be coming out soon as well. So keep your eyes peeled on that.
Yeah. And you can also check out my YouTube channel where I just dropped one every Thursday. I drop a recipe. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Look at that.
So it's kind of a virtual cookbook.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, we have a Texas native, Aisha. Are you with us? Hello.
Hey, hi Steve.
Hello.
Hi Lindsay.
Hi.
So, I just wanted to take a couple moments to say thank you for everything that you both do. Honestly, it's been I really appreciate everything that you guys post and everything. It's been great so far. And tomorrow's my birthday, so this is like a wonderful experience to have. It's like a birthday gift almost.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
So thank you. So for my question is about citric acid. So I wanted to know what your thoughts were on it and what exactly you know about it. Like just anything that you have to say about it, because I've seen it in my toothpaste, in my like mayo, for example, just hand soap. I wanted to know what exactly it was, because I know you can avoid it, and there are some products out there that don't have it, but I just wanted to know what exactly it was.
For sure. Anytime that you have something that's been processed, right, you get citric acid from lemon. So part of me is like, why not just use fresh lemon juice? So that's really kind of my answer to that. I know that when I was doing my spreads and sauces, I was, encouraged to use citric acid as it would be more shelf stable. So honestly, from an intuitive perspective, it didn't make sense in my food. It's like I would just squeeze fresh lemon juice in there. And then depending on that level, the acidity level, it would last a little bit longer. But I wouldn't consume anything that had citric acid in it, because it's not something that comes from a whole food. And I think that when you take anything from a whole food matrix, that it has so many other elements in there that help that have an intention throughout your body, right? And so when you do it from a reductionist standpoint, sometimes it can lead into some troublesome, symptoms or things like that.
Yeah, I know the question's a bit specific, but I just wanted to know, because we always have to get down to the specifics, especially with the food products and everything. And I also had a question about like what brands of like cleaning products you recommend, or what exactly you use for laundry or cleaning, whatever you use. What I'd love to know.
Cleaning products. Yes. So that varies. So sometimes it's baking soda, sometimes it's vinegar, but I'm not an appliance expert. So I know there are some people who will say that it might damage some like seals in your washers and dryers, and even your dishwashers and things like that. So I started to use that infrequently, but there is there is a brand that I use, and actually I think you guys use it here too, Branch Basics, maybe. And so that one has the cleanest solution, I feel, for laundry. Essentially, it's one small concentrate with maybe 5 ingredients in there, and then you just pour in water, and then depending on what you want to use it for, whether it be your windows, your countertops, or your dishwasher, is like that's the concentration and the water ratio varies.
I think, baking soda vinegar is definitely a classic. And if you want to get fancy, you can add like a drop of lemon essential oil or lemongrass, and it smells really good. My wife's always cleaning with various concentrations of baking soda vinegar and essential oils. Yeah. And then the only thing to really be aware of, Aisha, is like the greenwashing that goes on with a lot of these products. They'll just use buzzwords. They might even put like vegan hand soap or organic this, gluten-free hand soap. And you're like, oh, great, that must be healthy then. And you kind of look on the back, you compare it to just classic Dawn, and it's pretty much the same thing. So there are apps. I would Google, there's an app, and the name is escaping me right now, but it kind of is really good. It's really reliable, and it will give you like a rating scale of how legit something is versus how greenwashed it is. So stick to natural products as much as you can. Baking soda vinegar, I should probably be careful because I might be destroying my washing machine. So I will check into that.
Hydrogen peroxide actually too is a really great sort of stain removal.
Cool. So thank you for calling, Aisha. Happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday.
Keep being radical. Cool. Lindsay, we're about to wrap this thing up, but it was a really fun chat. I loved the scope of where we went with this, from nutrition to mindset to, connections and all of that stuff. Where could people go to keep up with what you're up to? What are you excited about? Any kind of closing statements that are on your heart that you'd like to share? The floor is yours.
Yeah. So of course you can follow me on Instagram, Animal Based Bae, as well as I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitter, or X now. YouTube. I'm definitely more active on YouTube, as you'll see more recipes drop weekly. So that'll help support you and your variety in the kitchen. As well as, so I guess I do have something exciting coming up. I am going to Greece in a couple of weeks, and that is because it's harvest season for olives. And so olive oil kind of gets a bad rap here, and rightfully so, because it's cut with a lot of different oils. Why? Cheaper costs, all these things, blah, blah, blah. But I think that we've been consuming it for a very long time, that I just really want to know the truth about it. So I'm going to, it's called PJ Cabos is the farm, and he harvests these amazing olives that are some of the lowest in linoleic acid content in the olive oil when they produce olive oil. So it's all about quality and how it's produced. And so I think that this will be a really interesting, content coming up to just explore all of olives and olive oil.
I love that. I was just in Mallorca a few months ago, and they produce a lot of olives. So we went to like the good olive farms where they don't use like chemicals and stuff. And I ate so many olives and delicious, rich olive oil. And I think you're right. I think the purest, like real stuff is like a liquid gold. But the concerns about what it's being cut with and sitting on the supermarket shelves for a long time and stuff. So stay peeled for that. That's really cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, Lindsay. This was a fun chat, and I'm sure we'll run it back again at some point in the future. You lot, stay radical, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Go follow Lindsay. Peace out. All right, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.